Hello, hello, and thank you for joining us for today's SEJ webinar. It must be Wednesday because here we are. With me, I'm excited. I have Nikita. Nikita is the head of product marketing at Moxo. This is your first webinar with us. Thanks, Nikita, for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here and really looking forward to diving in today.
Awesome. And then we also have Suma. Suma, I'm sorry, I don't know your position. So tell us a little about
Yeah,
you.
hi everybody. I'm Suma. I work as the product marketing manager at Moxo.
Perfect. Perfect. Suma is going to be hanging out in our breakout room today, which will open when we do the Q&A at the end of the presentation. But first, I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping before we get into the good stuff. So the Moxo team is here to talk to you about growth strategies and driving repeat business, really that customer retention point. And I know all of you marketers out there are super excited to hear about it. So first, use the chat. Let us know where you're coming in from. I'm in West Virginia. Would love to see where you guys are coming. Love that global audience. So our team can see where you're from. If you need closed captioning, it's the little CC in the top right of your screen. Just give that a little click. We are going to do Q&A at the end of the presentation. So if you have any questions for Nikita, leave those in the Q&A tab. If you see a question that you like, give it a little thumbs up. That'll push it to the top of the list. We'll do our best to front load those ones. Like I mentioned, Suma is going to be in the breakout room. We will open that at the Q&A portion. What you can expect there is she's going to go through a demo of what Moxo does, what their client portal looks like, and give you a taste of their automated templates that really help with that repeat business that we're talking about today. So if you're interested, that will be open at the Q&A. And before you leave today's call, we ask if you can stick around for a short survey. It lets us know how today's event went and how we can make them better for you in the future. So watch for that. And we've got some handouts. Nikita will talk to those in just a little bit. Look at all of these places. I see Chicago, New York, Prague, Turkey. Loving this. So awesome. All right. Well, Nikita, Suma, I'm going to get out of here. It is all yours.
Thank you so much. And such a pleasure to be with all of you today. As she was saying, I mean, just to see the global audience already, I'm really excited to be able to speak with each and every one of you. And hopefully this session is helpful. I think, one thing I would like to start with is by saying, yes, I come from Moxo and we really work with so many different B2B firms on how to manage business processes, how to change the way they conduct and orchestrate their client business. So I really believe retaining clients is both an art and a science, right? It's about creating processes that clients can trust and depend on over time. And so my goal is to share real practical advice, right? Impactful strategies to help you retain clients and drive repeat business. And these are strategies I've seen work with thousands of clients that we work with. So my goal really is to give you real advice, tangible advice that you can go ahead and in whatever form implement within your business. So, I'm going to break it into 5 key sections, so to speak. But to begin with, before we can get into the strategies, we first have to understand the importance of retention. And you're probably thinking, obviously, many of you will be business owners, business operators, and you're thinking, well, obviously, I know the importance of retention, right? But let's reinforce that because research shows that retaining clients can increase profits by up to 95%, right? So my goal today is when I help share these strategies with you, I want them to be actionable such that you can see this type of a repeat business and this type of, let's say, success with these strategies. And my background, as I mentioned at the beginning, comes from Moxo, right? So we really specialize in collaborative workflows to drive client business. We're designed for understanding complex interactions and the way that type of business takes place. So hopefully with what we'll go through today, you'll be able to get a sense of the uniqueness around developing a retention strategy for a B2B firm. Because we all know it's different than B2C. It's different versus whether you're a large firm or a small firm, the types of workflows and processes you run. So we're going to talk about the importance of that, the key challenges within B2B, and we'll get into how those strategies fit into solving for each one of those challenges. Now, I want to dive into talking about the strategic importance of client retention, right? And I said this at the beginning, just a few seconds ago. You're all going to think, well, this is obvious, right? But let's back up a second and let's all have a reminder of why it's obvious. Why is retention so important? Because the thing I see day in and day out is sometimes we hear these buzzwords. We hear, I need to drive repeat business. I need to build retention. And it comes down to how efficient is your business, right? How cost effective is your business? Because we all know retaining clients is cost effective. Studies show, acquiring a new client can be 5 to 25 times more expensive than retaining existing ones. And I think in B2B, this is particularly impactful because the sales cycle tends to be longer. There's more stakeholders. The partnerships take time to develop, but once they're there, they stay for longer. And in Moxo, we often see, clients achieving significant cost savings by automating some of these processes. So we'll get into what that means, right? But essentially, you want to think lower acquisition costs, increasing your ability to scale and operate. And then that gets into creating predictability in your revenue growth. When you can create predictability, you have a stable base, it enables you to focus on key business planning, to gain more stable revenue streams, which means more accurate forecasting, strategic planning. And then that leads to the sweet spot, right? When you have a longer lifetime value, you're able to really unlock more opportunities within that existing stable client base. Because, when your clients feel loyal to the experience you offer them and you've built that rapport, they're much more likely to refer you to other customers. And I know, and I see this again with our customers, that it's such a beautiful path to growth. In fact, I think Bain & Company had a study where they talked about how you could find that just with a 5% increase in retention in your customer base, you can boost profits anywhere from 25 to 95%. And that's just due to the power of referrals, right? Because if you think about somebody who comes in, runs through this complex service journey with you, you become known for the great experience you provide, immediately they're more likely to refer you to other customers. And that immediately means that customers referred by others typically have a higher lifetime value. And then last but not least, another very obvious one, upselling and cross-selling opportunities, right? Loyal clients, more open to exploring additional services, raises their lifetime value. Harder for them as a customer to go through the process also of finding a new firm to work with. So when they build that trust and they ensure that they're putting their money in the right hands and you are established as that credible source of support, they're more likely to continue working with you for other services. And this is where I'd say the cross-sell and upsell opportunities come into play. Okay. So I just went through what's probably the obvious. Why does retention matter? The next thing I want to go through is how to get into building the right strategy. So before we dive into what those strategies are, we have to think, well, now I know why retention is important. Next step is how to implement successful retention strategies. But to do so, you'll hear this on any talk I've ever done, and I truly, truly believe it. I like to live my life from this perspective as well. I believe in frameworks. And I think having a strong framework and a structured understanding of what the landscape is that you're designing your solutions for will give you much more success when it comes to long-term implementation of your retention strategies, right? What is the market you're building for? What does it look like today? And then what are the key challenges that we see on a day-to-day basis in B2B firms? Now, let's face it, the digital landscape, what does this really mean? Well, I'd say 40 to 50 years ago at this point, we were using paper and that was how contracts were done. Actually, you could go back 1,000 years ago, people were signing a contract with a papyrus quill, right? And that's how business was done. Relationships were formalized through, that conversation, that trust, and that rapport that people built with one another, plus documents. So I'd say the real shift that we've had two major shifts in the last 30 to 40 years, right? First was the internet era, changed the way we can manage time. It made it possible for people like all of us today to be here, be anywhere in the world and connect at the same time, right? This was transformational 20, 25 years ago, because prior to that, if you needed to conduct client business, what did it look like? It looked like flying a team out, sitting in person, getting in a room for 3-4 days, offering phenomenal coffee to them, a great client dinner, right? And a lot of that is still important, but it's very much things of the past. And that's due to this change in the digital landscape. It's due to the way we now operate in our day-to-day lives. We multiplex time. Now, the second significant platform shift that happened that changed the way business needs to be done and is being done is the rise of mobile. We are all used to carrying these devices around, right? I'm sure some of you right now are in texting conversations as I'm speaking here, and I wouldn't know. But the real power of mobile is that it completely changed the game in how we manage time, right? That's layer one. It changed the way in which we handle conversations. We can be in these 5, 10, 15 continuous texting conversations at the same time. You can be on a meeting right now. You could be texting with somebody. You could be managing your banking app. You could be ordering food from that from that phone at the same time. All of it's possible. So what did that do in terms of people's expectations and the way people acquire services? It changed the game from a push-driven model of services to a pull model. And that's very relevant to B2B, right? And we'll talk about why. But think about the way we operate in our day-to-day lives. We all pick up our phones. We use these things called apps where the context of whatever transaction or interaction or service we're trying to acquire is preset for us. Because when you're going to your DoorDash or food delivery app, the structure is built, but it's personalized to you, right? It's personalized because you see your address, restaurants that are close to you. There's a whole workflow and process automation set up around acquiring that food, connecting you with the driver, tracking till your food is delivered to your door. So I call it the Uberization, right? Or the change in the service delivery model of pulling services when you want. Now, this changed the world of B2C. Right? This is how B2C business is delivered. And especially when you come to consumer services, it's about blending structured automation with that personalization. And then, hey, if you have a question, you need to connect with your driver. You can connect within the context of that process within the app. So the app model changed the game for service delivery. Now, what's the problem with that when it comes to B2B? And honestly, any type of complex business is that these models were designed for low touch or no touch, right? Consumer services. The expectation has changed, right? Now, anybody in the world in most avenues of our life expects to have this kind of experience. But the problem is when it comes to business, technology hasn't advanced there yet, right? In fact, a lot of technology was built for the internet-driven era, and the strategy was, hey, it's mobile, let's add on an app version of that solution. And as we all know, that doesn't solve for the problem of managing complex client workflows like the ones we have in any type of B2B process, because business interactions have a different set of challenges that you have to solve for. You are dealing with working with customers, vendors, partners, a lot of different departments. And oftentimes we hear this day in and day out, the interactions are fragmented, it's chaotic, process times are longer. There's a lot more back and forth that needs to happen. There's increased costs and reduced quality. And that many times leads to gaps, drop-offs. And we all know, right? You start with onboarding. That first 2 months a customer has with you is the most critical time in which you can make or break that relationship. And I always like to say this, we'll talk about this a little more in depth later, but whether that customer is activated or not, right? Whether they're an active customer within that first onboarding phase will determine typically whether they're going to stay with you or not. But the issue is, this is what affects so many retention strategies when it comes to B2B firms, because this is what the workflow looks like. You have your customers on one side, they're dealing with 5, 6, 7 different ways you're reaching out to them as you increase your tech stack. They're trying to surf through emails to figure out, well, hey, where was that last request you sent me? I don't know. Did you want these 3 documents or 4? Or, we hear this all the time, right? Somebody will file a request. They start onboarding with you. They think their request has gone through. That person you're working with happens to forget or goes out of office. It gets lost in the email chain. And then a week later, the client says, hey, where are we with that? And your response is, oops, well, sorry, didn't realize that person was gone. And now that client has a negative experience immediately. Their likelihood of sticking with you is significantly lower just from the very fact that they can no longer trust that their requests are being looked out for. And this goes into whether you're onboarding a new client, whether you're going through some type of campaign process, a service delivery process. I really like to break it into 2 key segments. When you have consultative business, it's onboarding and account servicing. And these two segments are one of the most challenging things to manage because even the process of getting a signature, booking a time, having all the relevant parties involved is a very different set of parameters that you need to think about. And this is where B2B firms struggle. And this is where the drop off and the gaps happen because technology says add more systems, but adding more systems doesn't make it more efficient, nor does it make it more streamlined and easy for clients and account managers to use. So we see this, right? I'd break the challenges into two categories. One, the inefficiencies in service workflows. When you have these kind of disjointed processes, what does it mean? It means there's more drop-offs, stalled project progress, inconsistent communication, longer response time. There's information silos, right? Somebody thinks that the other person knows, the other person wasn't copied on the thread. Oh, but then they sent a message on their Slack channel and then they realize, well, it's a week out and the communication was all wrong. And so now the customer is left waiting, right? And what does that lead to? It leads to poor client experiences, which is, in quotes, poor client retention, because they have a delayed time to value. They have a delayed experience in getting value from your business. And it's an inefficient use of their time. I mean, when clients come to you, especially in B2B, where the transaction values are higher and it's more consultative, they're coming to you to acquire that service and acquire your knowledge. So it's so critical that you are able to present them with a phenomenal experience, and they have to put in less work to get more value, right? So what are some specific factors we now need to think about when saying, okay, well, this is the problem, right? We know the world we live in. We got the landscape down. This is the expectation. This is the problem with why tech today hasn't really solved for the complexity of what we deal with in B2B workflows. So what are those challenges and what are those specific factors we have to account for when building a retention strategy for B2B, right? You could say, is it as simple as just putting together an app? Well, clearly not, right? Because some businesses have 5 apps and the experience is still terrible. It's still disjointed and hard to manage. So why? Well, I think there are a couple of key things we have to think about with B2B, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. But let's go through them, right? One is transaction values are higher. In B2B, when you're working with your clients, the value of that conversation and that service cycle is always higher. So that means there's more complexity. Complexity means there's consultation involved. It's not a process that can be fully automated. You cannot completely remove the human being. Maybe there's a significant part of it that can be, and we'll get into how do you do that, but you can't completely remove the human being because that person or that account is coming to you and paying for your knowledge and for your human expertise and services. So complexity equals, it's not typically even one single action. There's a multitude of different business actions that need to happen, maybe on your side, on the customer side, and that back and forth creates the complexity. The next thing is persistence. Well, typically these cycles, if it's going well, they're longer sales cycles and they're longer conversations with customers. So if you're looking at a client account, you need to be able to go back 6 months ago and not have to surf through emails or spotty data in a CRM and say, well, what did that customer agree to? You want to be able to say, hey, at this step in the workflow, 6 months ago, this is what we discussed. So let's pull that document in and let's make a revision accordingly. Persistence is key. History is key, right? You can't, unlike with Uber or DoorDash or these apps we use, it's not that important unless you've lost your wallet or you didn't get your food, right? The likelihood of you needing to go back to your Uber history or DoorDash history, for the most part, is relatively lower. Next, I love to talk about this one. It's roles. Okay, there's not one person to one person typically in B2B. You typically have a multitude of people on both sides. And part of the problem in the way our tech stacks are currently set up is that they were designed for individual to individual, right? So we have these group chat rooms with all of our teams. We have our internal, solutions where we message each other. But when it comes to the client, there's an email per person involved on the client side. Maybe there's a meeting solution that we send links to. There's a separate room for where, we discuss the documents that need to be shared. So before you know it, you're asking your client to have 5 or 6 or 7 different areas that they access just to work with you. And that in itself means you're putting a lot of onus on the client and that one person responsible for the account from your side to communicate clearly. And tomorrow, by the way, that creates other issues because if that person is who they're building loyalty with, that person leaves your organization, The customer is now loyal to the person they've been working with versus the experience you offer. I mean, you see this all the time in wealth management. You see it in, in so many organizations. You see it in marketing firms all the time because somebody trusts the creative rapport and experience they've had with a certain individual. When that person leaves, they take their business with them. So, how do you build loyalty to an experience where all relevant stakeholders in your organization and on the client side have visibility? They're all involved in the process at the level they need to be, right? So, meaning some need to literally take action, some need to just track the progress, some need to have visibility in case it relates to another process they're running internally. And then, last but not least, two key factors: documents. Any type of consultative complex workflow involves a lot of documents. Document sharing, document collection, document discussions. Documents are typically the basis, whether you're running a marketing campaign, somebody's filling out a client intake form, you're sharing a proposal, you're sharing, information on the results of an SEO test that you did, right? You need the documents, and the documents are the basis for discussion. People are not simply reaching out to say, "Hi, how are you?" and, "What's the weather like?" But if you're offering some kind of interaction, that interaction is to reach out and engage with you about the service cycle that they're going through. So that's typically document based. And a critical piece of all of this is you need to be able to have tracking, right? Compliance and security in this day and age. I mean, we see people getting fined left, right, and center. And especially we work with a lot of large banks, and this happens in their end where people are using WhatsApp to communicate, right? Or they're using messaging solutions and personal devices, and then boom, they're slapped with a lawsuit. Now, maybe in the day-to-day world of B2B firms, right, this happens. But one of the biggest issues then is being able to track and record every single that interaction and be able to refer back to it. And that's where you end up with a lot of spotty data and loops and gaps in the security process of working with customers and managing those accounts. So we talked about the digital landscape. We talked about why retention is important, why it should matter. And we talked about the problem statement in B2B. What are the experiences that we see people going through on a day-to-day basis? Why is it hard to solve for that? And what are the specific parameters and challenges that you have to think about when building a strategy for B2B? So now I want to dive into what those strategies are, right? What have I seen work firsthand? What has Suma, my colleague here, seen work firsthand with our clients day in and day out? I'd say it all starts with onboarding, right? Onboarding is where you can either activate that client relationship, and if that client doesn't get activated during onboarding, the likelihood of them being retained is very low. So it starts with delivering a seamless, efficient experience to customers throughout their onboarding process and leveraging automation to do so. When you can deliver to a great onboarding experience, that naturally transitions into being able to deliver a great account servicing experience. Why? Because customers are more likely to continue with you, right? During that initial stage is when you make or break the relationship. And if you get them to that account servicing stage and they've gone through this great experience, well, now you're able to naturally think about how to better manage more of such service processes in less time. And when you can create a system for that, you're able to drive more business, repeat business, and expand, right? And we'll talk about what that means. Why can you create more service offerings? What have we seen our customers do? The third is around tailoring solutions. And I know tape 3 and 4 are a little connected. And you might think tailoring, personalization, those words scare people because they think it means more cost for their business. But we'll talk about why it doesn't necessarily have to mean that, and what can tailoring solutions for your customers look like in this day and age where it's cost efficient, cost effective, and creates more business for you. And that comes down to personalizing the client experience when you're able to cater to a way that makes them feel they're really taken care of. They really got concierge service from you. They're much more likely to continue sticking around with you. And last but not least, we got to talk about AI, right? The buzzword of the century right now, but we have to talk about it. We have to talk about why AI is so important and why not to be scared of it. What are ways in which you can leverage AI to assist your knowledge workers, drive business growth, and in reality, use it as a strategy to transform your knowledge workers' ability to better deliver human services. So let's start with how to achieve this strategy. And then let's go through each individual piece of it. This is an overarching strategy, right? But to do this, you need to create collaborative workflows. You have to create collaborative workflows for driving onboarding and driving account servicing. And if you do that, you'll be able to enact these 5 strategies. Why? Because you need to create a streamlined experience that's transparent. So, like we talked about, all parties involved have the ability to see what's going on and take action where needed. You can support the ability for consultation, which makes up sometimes 90 to 90% of a process, right? Is the stuff you can't plan for. It's the unstructured interaction. It's the I have a question. Oh, I don't like the design on this. Can we discuss this further? What do you think about changing this here? What about these terms? That back and forth, that consultation, you can't get rid of in B2B. That's the core of it. So you need to be able to support that within the context of the workflow. When a process is running, you don't want to send your customers to 3 other systems to have them interact and ask you a question. You want to maintain context and be able to provide consultative service within that one place. So it drives efficiency, you gain insights, and we'll talk about what that means. And you create a seamless experience for your customers, vendors, partners, client accounts. So, what are 3 key things that I think everybody needs to think about when understanding why collaborative workflows help? Number 1, any service process you're working on with customers, whether it's one action as simple as getting a signature or having them fill out a form, or multiple. And by the way, most service processes, especially in B2B, are multiple actions. The process is built of structured business actions. So acquiring documents, getting a signature, getting an approval, acknowledging something, booking a time. These are all business actions that different parties in the process need to do, right? Alongside that, I would say that is one of the toughest things that businesses go through, just simply getting these business actions completed. So when we talk about process, when we talk about workflow, I want to go back to why it's so important to businesses, because we hear this all the time. The number one challenge that businesses face is sometimes getting something as simple as the right documents from a customer, is having the client complete that action. And a lot of what I've talked about so far is why it's so difficult for clients to actually complete these actions and why it leads to drop-offs and lower retention rates is because of the experience the client has to go through, the level of work on them sometimes just to complete one of these business actions as part of a process. So, number 1, you want to leverage collaborative workflows to drive actions. That's the core of any service process, driving business actions to completion, right? Number 2, you need everybody involved. Everybody who needs to have visibility should be able to see what's going on, see where things are in the process, right? And from that, you're able to naturally build trust. You naturally have better control over the entire service process. So let's say you see a process stalling, you or somebody else from your team can dive right in and nudge it in the right direction. And then number 3, it comes down to, well, if you have all this data and you're running great processes and things are going so smoothly with collaborative workflows, what do you do with the data? Well, you want to be able to dive into that data and get greater insights on how well things are running. We have customers who will templatize all of their processes and say, okay, well, here's my onboarding for this tier of clients. Here are the 10 types of service processes I offer to this subset of customers. And great, whenever I need to run that process, I just pull the template, kick it off, add the relevant stakeholders, and let the system do the guiding of who needs to take action. And now, by the way, your client feels like they have a really great personalized supportive experience. But one of the most valuable things is when you can go in and say, hey, I'm running 10 onboarding workflows, and I notice every single one of them is stalling around step 7. That's good data right there. Maybe there's something I can do to better optimize the way I'm running that step. Or, hey, of my 5 account managers working on these kinds of projects, I noticed this person's workflows are running, at a 10% rate that's slower than the rest of the people. Maybe there's something about my team productivity I need to look into, right? So when you can, A, drive business actions, you can increase visibility such that everybody relevant needs to be involved, knows what's going on. And then 3, get insights to better drive outcomes. You've got your strategy set. And this is why you need collaborative workflows. So let's go into those 5 points I broke down, right? A couple of slides back. Starts with automation. Why does this strategy matter? Well, we've talked about it, but one of the most important factors is because onboarding is where you make or break that customer relationship. In fact, I'd say onboarding is the foundation of a successful client relationship. A smooth onboarding process builds trust from day one. Effective onboarding is essential for long-term retention. And in fact, according to research, 86% of new clients say they're more likely to stay loyal to a company that offers welcoming and easy onboarding experiences. It sets the tone for your relationship. And in fact, I've also read that a positive experience with onboarding in these early stages can lead to 70% greater likelihood of retention, whereas a negative or confusing experience increases the chances of early churn by as much as 60%. So why do I like to think about collaborative workflows and starting with rolling out with onboarding? Because most onboarding processes are quite structured. Yes, you may have a different one based on type of customer, but they're structured and you run the same process again and again and again. So the more you can leverage automation and collaborative workflows where the system guides that process and you can templatize it, then you can run more onboarding process at the same time and spend less of your account manager's time manually following up, that dead time that goes in a lot of the manual management of these interactions and simply completing a single business action. A lot of it then goes to exception handling. That you got a question, I can help you, I can provide that more consultative service. So how do you implement this effectively? At Moxa, we've observed automating onboarding is transformative, right? So when you have system guided reminders, you got that document collection, approval tracking, signatures, booking a time, even something like that, which takes so much back and forth, you create a seamless experience for clients. You reduce errors, right? You reduce the ability for errors when your system has already set the process. So how do you implement this? Well, I would say start by going in and writing out, what is my current onboarding process? Where can I better optimize this, right? How would I like it to run? Who are the key stakeholders involved in each step in my process, right? So process optimization. Who needs to have visibility? Who needs to take action? Is a certain step in a process dependent on another party? When you can map this out, then you can go in and say, let me build my ideal template to standardize my processes and drive that collaborative workflow so that any single time a customer comes on board, push out the workflow, add the relevant stakeholders, and the work is done for you. Let the system guide the process. And when you can invite all relevant participants to that process for enhanced visibility, you're immediately able to create a smooth start and cut onboarding times dramatically. I mean, we have customers who say they've cut onboarding by 90%. And no, I'm not making that up, 90%. Why? Because we've seen onboarding is one of the biggest challenges people start with, because the amount of time that gets lost and getting the client started, getting those signatures, getting data from them, going back and forth, that is where so much time gets lost. So that's your strategy one, right? Lay out onboarding and start there. And when you can optimize onboarding, you get into streamlining the client service journey, right? Positive onboarding leads to better service journeys. You're able to offer more services to clients in less time. Why do I say that? Because when you're able to templatize more of your processes, the system of collaborative workflows is driving each one of those actions. So instead of you saying, hey, let me email my customer for a question on the files that they shared. Oh, they only uploaded 2, but they were supposed to upload 3. Well, now you can immediately go in and say, well, the system is going to nudge them. The system's going to say, hey, please complete this action and upload these 4 files. Oh, it's completed? Well, now guess what? Everybody can see that the next action depends on these 2 people, and the system is going to nudge them and guide them. So you're able to, as a result, offer more services to clients in less time because you're doing less of that manual follow-up yourself, right? The second thing that's critical to mention here is when customers have this kind of experience in onboarding and they continue to have it through their service cycle, they're more likely to be loyal to the experience you offer. And I bring that one up again because the number of businesses we have that come in and say, well, it's frustrating, right? We invest so much time and money. I mean, we know the pain of investing time, money, and effort in acquiring a new customer. And then at the end of it, the customer leaves. It's painful. It's horrible. And you sit there and you wonder, what could I have done better? And the biggest thing is not getting intimidated by technology, but also not going out there and buying 10 different tech solutions, but really thinking about what do I want to optimize in my business and how do I make sure that my clients leave with a great great memory in their minds of the experience they've had with me. So how do you implement this for your service cycle? Segment your customers. Think through what are the key processes that you run per tier and draw them out. Templatize your workflows per process, right? When you're able to do that, you start to think, well, maybe in this system, I use a payment system. So I'm going to need to have that in my workflow. Or maybe here, there's other external project management solutions I use that my team needs to be able to track or have automatically updated when something happens in the workflow. And that's something we've really specialized in doing because I believe that when you build the right collaborative workflow, you're able to connect other relevant systems that you need as a part of your process. Now, the third part, and I really love this one, is offering tailored solutions. What does tailored solutions mean, right? Well, if you're able to provide a great onboarding experience, you're able to streamline your workflows, provide this collaborative workflow experience where clients have one destination for each process, you immediately create a much smoother experience, you enhance responsiveness, you foster transparency, you reduce friction, all of which help retain clients long term. The next thing I'd say is around tailoring, right? In B2B relationships, maintaining context is essential. You want to be able to work with clients on complex long-term projects. So you need to see the past interactions we talked about, agreements, project details. Clients need to sign something, but they see something incorrect. They want to change something maybe that they discussed a year ago with you and the order that they go on an annual basis with. So you want clients to be able to dive in. You want them to be able to pull data, right? We talked about that pull model. You need them to have a single destination to go in the same way they do in their personal life or in their life of B2C consumer services. Go into working with your firm and say, oh, I have a question about this process. Well, it's obvious to me that this is where I go for it. I have this one collaborative workflow, and this is my single source of truth for where I am in this process, what needs to happen. And in fact, by the way, Forrester had a quote that said 74% of B2B, decision makers state that disjointed communication, lack of context, cause process delays and client dissatisfaction. So when you maintain that continuity of the conversation over the cycle, you immediately provide this very personalized, tailored experience, and you prevent critical details from falling through the cracks. And I think a big part of that then is thinking about creating this, I'd say, the age of the pull model, right? Where clients want to check in on their terms. They want data on their terms. I love the Domino's Pizza example. I use it all the time, but it's the truth, right? We all love seeing that little tracker that shows you where you are in a process, where you are, or where's your pizza, it's on the way. Why is it any different when it comes to client business processes? One of the biggest issues is clients being able to go in and just know where I am, what stage I'm at, what needs to get done. So when you can empower your clients, empower them to have data in their hands, create that single workflow per process, you immediately create an experience in which your clients know that when I think of this firm, I'll always know where I am. I always know what needs to happen, and things move seamlessly and smoothly. So the Domino's Pizza experience matters because you want to create, that experience where clients know that when they need information, they have it. Because when clients are left in the dark, they lose trust. They're more likely to look for alternatives. So when you create this responsive client-centric model, that transparency empowers clients, you shift from a push model of, here, I'll send you these 5 emails or this campaign, to a pull model. And that makes B2B interactions feel more modern, more accessible and responsive. And clients appreciate having insight into each stage of a process, right? It reduces anxiety through clarity. So if you can go in and think about how to create those proactive, transparent solutions where clients can come in and say, anywhere I am in the world, I could be boarding a flight right now. I could be sitting at the mall. I could be going for a movie with my family or dinner, but I can pull out my phone and I can see what's happening. That's key. So I really want to bring up that point of mobile again. Having a solution that's mobile first is critical. That doesn't mean, most of your work will happen on mobile, but it means that things don't end the moment somebody leaves their desk or their laptop. That process continues, that workflow continues. And that is not common when it comes to B2B business. In fact, we are stuck surfing through our email apps and trying to use the mobile version of a meetings app. And we all know how clunky those experiences can get. So when you enable your clients to have this tailored experience that meets them where they are, it's on their terms, that anytime, any place model, you're much more likely to increase retention and allow more project visualization tools in real time, where customers feel like they're in control and they're very well informed. Now, as I get to the final stages of this here, I want to talk about personalization and AI, right? Personalization means a few things. Personalization means that when your system is guiding a lot of that process, as we've talked about, because you're setting up those automated reminders, there's automation built in where it's actually guiding the process and taking you through each action without you having to manually do it, then your team's time is better spent focusing on building that client relationship and delivering consultative advice, right? So your team is then there to be able to deliver better services, spend more of their time on the human side of things, which is giving advice. And that's why somebody comes to your firm. And a second side of that is being able to really dive into seeing each client. Now, I need to be able to go in and get a full picture to say, oh, here's what the client last followed up. I noticed that this step in this workflow, they struggled, or this is where there was some pushback. That immediately tells you something more and gives you a more comprehensive picture of what you might need to do to ensure your client stays with you, right? It gives you a better sense of how to retain them versus shooting blindly and hoping that your strategy of the way you set up your CS team is going to be good enough. And then one fine day when that cancellation comes in, you're stressed out. And now you're trying to pick up the pieces of reading through spotty CRM data and trying to surf through emails and messages to find out what's going on. So if you can visualize those project phases, you can create a clear tracker for yourself, then you can actually create more personalized client recommendations. And personalization does not mean greater costs. This is something that people think about. Personalization is key to B2B success, but people hear personalization and they think it's resource intensive. It means you have to increase staffing or costly adjustments. But with the right tech, personalization doesn't have to mean increased costs. In fact, I see that with Moxo, our focus is on making account managers more efficient through assisted workflows and then enabling them to deliver more tailored, personalized services without that extra workload. And that comes to the final strategy, AI, something that people are sometimes scared of, something that some people have already taken and embraced and implemented in their business. So wherever you are in that process, I think the way I see AI and the way we see it really working for our customers is, we're not looking to replace the knowledge worker, nor is that really possible in B2B. In most B2B situations, clients are coming to you for that consultation. So we like to think about it as AI-driven workflows. You need AI. You need AI to make things run efficiently, but it's about assisting that knowledge worker, right? When you can, create this type of way of removing some of those repetitive tasks, handling data insights without taking away from the human elements of client service, actually the AI assistant then helps your teams approach maximum efficiency and enables them to focus on delivering high-touch service while AI takes care of task tracking and reminders. And in fact, I've seen this day in and day out, right? A lot of customers come in, they start with onboarding with us, they roll out this workflow, then they say, wow, we've seen so much time saved just from running this. And our clients have such a great experience. We want to roll it out for other service processes in our account servicing experience. Now that we've done that, we want to figure out how to optimize it even more. Can we integrate some kind of a bot that anytime you come back in the workspace or that collaborative workflow, everybody knows and the bot tells them what's last happened, what they've missed when they were gone, right? So it's about thinking about how to leverage AI in the context of process management. And when you can do that, you can see efficiency gains of 30% or more. And in B2B, where service workflows are so complex, AI helps reduce that manual workload and increase client satisfaction. So, one thing I'll end with here is we've really understood this problem, right? Our foundation comes from WebEx. Our co-founder and CEO was Zuber Iyer, the founder of WebEx. And WebEx transformed the way people connected and did business and managed client service workflows in an internet-driven era. So the challenge we see is that it's the same problem with a different set of parameters in a mobile-driven era, right? The problem statement actually hasn't changed. Client business has always been done the same way, but the problem is the landscape has changed. The way we expect to have that service has changed. And there's new parameters, new challenges we have to think about with that digital landscape. So from my side and our experience here at Moxo, we work primarily with B2B firms who go through this because the number one challenge that we wanted to solve for was thinking about how to better orchestrate business processes, how to blend in those structured business actions, which is the core of retention. The more actions you can get done, the higher your retention rates, because that means things are running smoothly and efficiently, and you're completing more of your service cycles. And if it runs seamlessly, the implication is it's an easier experience, and a better, easier experience is what your clients then associate you with. That then means stakeholder visibility. People who need to be involved are all involved. So the whole point of saying seamless, streamlined, collaborative workflows is it captures all those various strategies we just talked about. And when you have a question, when someone needs to interact, you can dive right into that workflow. The workflow itself sets the context for the conversation because you know you're asking questions that's related to this process. And every single piece of the data and history can happen right then and there in the conversation. So now you never have to break that workflow. And that's really the way we think about it. You want to provide an exceptional experience. When you can provide a great streamlined experience, it means better retention for you. I mean, and by the way, we speak from the truth here in the sense that we use our own platform. And we saw our retention dramatically improve by using our own platform for managing our onboarding because we're a B2B firm and we onboard our clients, and the biggest drop-offs happen during onboarding. So when you can really leverage the seamless system to drive that process for you and enable your CSMs, your account managers, your technical teams, everybody who may be involved, your design teams in managing that process at whatever relevance they need to have, you're immediately creating a better experience and you're able to offer more services. So as I end here, I just want to bring up somebody I spoke with recently. So we host a podcast, and I love to speak with our customers to just understand why did they search for, Moxo? What are these challenges they faced in their firm? What are the kinds of workflows they had struggled with, and how they chanced upon us, what they ended up doing, how they implemented. And we have so many people's stories you can go and listen to. But this is one I wanted to bring here today. Michael Davies, he has a big digital marketing firm in the UK, and he has a couple different firms under that umbrella. RevGen is the one we're talking about here. But he transformed by starting with onboarding. And their onboarding used to be 2 weeks plus, down to 4 days. And he says they used to have to sit in their office and go through every account so he, as an owner and operator, could know what's happening, making sure things are running smoothly because data was spotty. And now that reporting is down to 2 hours a week because it's so clear. He can go into his system, he can see what's happening in each process. He may not need to talk to any of these clients, but he immediately knows and he can hold people accountable. So just with that, he says he's been able to look after 50% more clients per account manager because it enables him and his team to be more efficient. And that means more cost saving. It saved them more time, allowed them to have more clients with the same amount of resources. So if we're thinking about retention here, you got to think, how do I implement purpose-driven tech? Don't get overwhelmed by the 50,000 solutions you're going to see out there and the many ads and great marketing language. It comes down to tying the use of technology to improving specific processes in your service cycle. And my recommendation is always start with onboarding, because when you capture onboarding with a great experience, you capture the client right then and there, right? And then people are loyal to the experience. Number 2 is don't get scared by AI. AI can be an assistant to your knowledge workers. You can drive efficiency, personalization, and actually reduce a lot of that manual load, make your teams more efficient, deliver a more personalized, greater experience to customers, build retention, and as a result, be able to build more opportunities for growth, expand your business offerings. So I want to say thank you so much. I really appreciate everybody's time today. I truly hope this was helpful for you. And I speak from the heart here, right? I love what I do because I love working with businesses of all types, no matter how large or small, from all over the world, because you couldn't believe how many people have the same challenges again and again and again. And more tech, more advanced solutions doesn't mean easier. In fact, many times it means harder to distinguish what is truly helpful. So I come, here today to just say thank you so much. And I really hope this was helpful to you all.
Awesome. Thanks, Nikita. That was great information. All right. So we are going to open up the breakout room. We are going to, thank you, Jonathan. We are going to put Suma over there. So she's there waiting for you. And we are going to take some Q&A on this side. You ready, Nikita? Let's go.
Yes.
All right. So first and foremost, we had a good question from Melanie. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw these up here. And so you should be able to see these a little easier, Nikita. So how can you encourage other departments to better cross-sell service offerings? So when we're thinking about onboarding, so yeah, any insight there?
Yeah, I think one key thing we've seen is a lot of times departments themselves operate like their own businesses, especially as firms get larger. So that's part of the information silo and gap. I mean, we've had it happen in our own organization where we didn't realize something is happening on the CS side with an account and a sales team member is not kept involved, right? And you have to go in, figure out why everybody wasn't kept up to speed. And then two people have different strategies sometimes for the same account. So, a large part of this comes down to transparency. I think part of what we thought about when building these collaborative workflows is these kinds of day to day business scenarios and challenges where you want people and all people involved at whatever level to have that visibility. And so part of it is saying if this particular account is transitioned out of onboarding, these are the people who now need to be, let's say, involved in that process. Maybe that sales team member from another department doesn't need to take any action. They just need to have viewership to know how that client relationship is continuing. Maybe the CSM needs to be the one who's assigned the actions of QBRs and following up with the client and account updates and new invoices. But just by bringing everybody together within that one continuous workspace where you and everybody involved knows what's happening, there's less of an opportunity for things to slip through the cracks and more collaboration between departments because now you know immediately what somebody else is doing from another part of let's say another part of your team that you might typically have no understanding or involvement in just because there's a lot of manual load and following up on what another department's actions are on a certain account, right? So my thing always comes back to transparency, keeping everybody involved as they should be within that conversation.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. All right, so let's see. So Hello asks, is there any standard framework that you can share that follow to align the customer journey to AI automation?
I'm careful with that term standard framework, right? Because I think that every business is a bit different in what you want to use AI for. But I would say the standard core of it that I see that you could say is relevant to any business size, any service cycle, is tying it to the use of where you want to make things more efficient. So if you start with saying, and that's why I like to say, start with the process. Which process do you want to optimize, right? Okay. Number two, who are all the human beings involved? What do they need to do? What's dependent on what, like we talked about? Map that out and then templatize it. Then AI comes in to say, well, do I simply need it to be able to make sure I'm just making a better experience for customers? So when someone comes in, they know what's happened? Or do I want AI to be able to give them more predictions? So, for example, we have customers, in the financial services space, and they use AI to bring in this idea of saying, hey, my wealth manager gave me this advice. Hey, bot, what do you think about this advice? And being able to offer that experience to a customer to cross-reference information being given to them, right? Or pull previous statistics or documents that were shared with them a year ago so they don't even have to search the workflow for this information, right? So I don't know if I directly answered your question or not, and I want to be careful with saying it's different per business based on each process and what you're trying to optimize in that process. But if you use that as your framework, then I think you'll be able to use AI in the right way to make that process run more efficiently, which is what it's about.
I think that's great. And it's the standard SEO answer, which is it depends, right? Because it really does. What does standard mean? Because
Exactly.
it should be personalized to you, to your clients, and to their needs, right? So I think that's a great point. All right. So we had a couple questions submitted um, that we couldn't, yeah, it's offline. So anyway, so
Okay.
it looks like they're from Jonathan. But anyway, how do you introduce clients to your automated onboarding process and ensure minimal drop-offs, which I think is a great question.
Well, I think onboarding is the first taste somebody gets of an experience with you, right? We all know it. They sign, you get started. And so a lot of times, and I'll speak from experience with our clients as well as us, right? The reason we like to start with onboarding is you can automatically give people a taste of what the rest of their experience is going to be like. So from the moment they get signed up, send them an access, right? Invite them to a collaborative workflow for their onboarding journey. We do it for our employees, we do it for our customers, and our customers do it for their customers. So the moment that client signs, it's no longer here's 5 attachments to an email, and now you can expect a separate person to follow up with you with a meeting link, right? And here's somebody else's Calendly that you need to book a time for. No, it's here's one link, dive right in, and here you go. Here's your entire process built out. You can see every single step that needs to happen. You can see when things are due. And that's a large part of what we thought about, right? Is if you want customers to experience value from you quickly, you need to make that entrance to your workflow as seamless as possible, right? So, why are certain meeting solutions so much more popular than other meeting solutions? And I don't want to name names here, but I would just say there are. And there are solutions that most people will turn to and just saying, oh, it's so much easier. Why? Because the experience of entering is so easy and joining. So when you make your join experience easy, right? And for us, it's something as simple as sending out a link. And that's it. You dive in, you can sign up for an account if you want, but you dive in and you're in your workflow. And everything you need is right there. There's one destination for it all. I'd say that ensures minimal drop off.
Yeah, I think those are great points. So let's see. I think this kind of goes in line with that one. Yeah, we'll grab this one. All right. How do you manage client handoffs between different teams or departments during that onboarding?
Oh, this is a great one because I think I hate to sound repetitive, but I really think it comes down to having all stakeholders involved. One of the most difficult things we know with managing any type of consultative service, client onboarding, is the multiple stakeholders. And we've seen this happen in the past too, where business will come in and say, well, these people are responsible for this part of it. Some of these steps can happen in parallel. Oh, but nobody told the other team that they're starting on their side. So the client now thinks, but you finished your part. Oh, but that other team didn't get started, right? Now you're delayed a week. It's painful. It's painful and it ruins client experiences. So I think a big part of templatizing your workflow is you already know which team, not maybe person, maybe it's not person dependent, but which team or role needs to take action on a certain part of the process. So part of what we've done is we've designed our workflows to be highly flexible, to say you can assign roles to each action. You can have certain steps take, let's say happen in parallel, but certain steps happen only after a section of the workflow is done. So what you do by creating and building out your processes exactly how they should happen is that when somebody is done with a certain part, the system is going to tell you that it's your turn. The system is going to tell everyone it's your turn, right? It's no longer, oh, I'm dependent on that person to tell that other team member. And if they happen to forget, oops, that's a delayed client onboarding experience right then and there. You want the workflow to drive the process. And so I'd say one of the biggest things is when we built Moxa and we built these workflows, we wanted them to be agile and flexible such that somebody could go in and really match their process to a T. And no matter, if let's say our tech team is involved in 3 steps, but there's a 30-step process. Once that tech team's involvement is done, they can leave. It's not like they need to stay and take action on the rest of the process.
Okay, we're going to take one more question. How does somebody, so they're just getting into this, right? They don't know where to start. So what type of processes can even be streamlined to be more consistent with clients?
So I think, we talked about onboarding. That's an obvious one because it's somebody's first impression with you, make or break the relationship. So many stats show if your client gets activated here, that's where they're most successful with their lifetime value with you. But let's say you have existing clients, right? And it's not as simple as bringing on somebody new. I think part of it is the advice I ended on, which is tying it to a specific service cycle or a specific process. If you might say, hey, this is a certain type of construction project or design project that I'm running. and that I have a chunk of these. And, maybe this specific process is something that my business is really focusing on. Well, great. I'd say there's no right or wrong process to start with, but I would always say start with the ones that are most common, right? Start with the service offerings that you focus on the most. Because when you can optimize that workflow, then the likelihood is you're going to be able to offer more of those. And so a lot of times we have a lot of marketing firms, there's so many marketing firms as our customers. So they'll start with onboarding, but the reality of it is onboarding is actually almost client servicing in marketing, right? Because onboarding somebody, taking them through a new project cycle, intake, all of that leads to the service kicking off. And so, it's very closely tied to which types of services they might, focus on delivering the most at their firm or where they're most specialized in. And I think start with one. Start with one. And once you start with that and you see the results, it becomes very easy to add on others. And it'll become obvious to you to say, well, we have this other process that we run between our two teams. Maybe it's not even involving the client. A lot of times it ends up teaching you that there's 6 or 7 other things you run internally that aren't running that smoothly, but you could be running it better, right? So the answers will show.
I think that's a great point too. Start somewhere. Like, just start at one place. Don't try to eat like the entire elephant at one time, as they say. But yeah, starting in one place. And I'm just going to throw out there for our email, for our marketers out there, onboarding is also important for your email campaign. So every time I hear you say onboarding, because like we're in planning right now, and I'm looking at that email side and like, that's really important too. So it's not just for client side, but think about what you're doing in your email too. All right.
Absolutely. Thank
That's
you
my
so
little
much.
PSA.
And I wanted to mention one thing before we drop off today is check out the handouts here, right? We have a document that talks through how we've seen marketing firms transform their processes with Moxo. And, I say this clearly too. I'm not trying to pitch you Moxo. Maybe it's not for you, right? But what I am trying to do here today is give you real stories that have worked for other people, because that's what it comes down to. How can you make your business as successful as possible? So check out the RevGen Story podcast. We have that linked here under the handout section. You can learn how they implemented, how they went about thinking, which processes to select. And there's a lot of cool data you can get from there if you want to get started.
Awesome. And we'll make sure that that's in the follow-up email. Nikita, first webinar with SEJ. Thank you so much for being here, sharing all of your information. Before we let you go real quick, tell the people where to find you.
Thank you so much. Please check us out at www.moxo.com. You can always reach out to us at flow@moxo.com. Additionally, you can always email me. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm always checking. So if you have any questions, just want to chat, reach out. We'd love to help. Thank you so much for your time.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks, Nikita. With that, we're going to let everybody go. Have a great rest of your day. We will see you on the next SEJ webinar. Bye, guys.
Bye.